Blessings to you. My name is Jere B. As you know, I am the EntreMusician, and so are you. And so is this wonderful gentleman who is a legend in his own time, an iconic Hall of Famer in every sense of the word. We're going to talk to him. His name is Chris Jasper. You may not know the man, but you definitely know the music. We're going to dive in right after we do this. As you know, all of our videos are sponsored by the wonderful people at Vocal. Vocal is the only beverage on the planet designed to soothe, refresh, and restore your voice. If you talk all day like I sometimes do, or sing all night like Mr. Jasper does, then you definitely have to get some Vocal. You want to go to drinkvocal.com to learn more. Now, I'm telling you, if you know me or talk to me more than 2 minutes, you know that I'm a child of the 70s. Grew up on the 70s music. My band Sound Doctrine references the 70s in our music all the time. And this gentleman right here on the left of your screen greatly contributed to the soundtrack of my life. And I got to tell you, even my beautiful wife, when I said, yo, I am interviewing Chris Jasper today, she said, tell Chris I've had a crush on him from the 5th grade through high school. I said, no, I'm not telling him that. He is absolutely the man. Grammy Lifetime Award winner, BET Lifetime Award winner, even in Germany, Lifetime Award winner, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This gentleman was the architect to the Isley Brothers sound, 15 solo albums in his own right, continuing to do it, a pioneer, a forefather, and yet still relevant to what's happening right now in 2019. Mr. Jasper, I salute you. Blessings to you. Welcome to the EntreMusician.
Well, thank you. And thanks for that really nice introduction. Thank you.
Well, you deserve it and more. I got to tell you, really, from the time that I was like that high, you can't even see my hand, to now, I have loved the Isley Brothers. But, you know, like I said, all that 70s stuff was right on point. And when you think about what you hear today in today's music, you helped to pioneer what's going on today. So we got to stop and salute you. I have listened to 100 interviews or more about the Isley Brothers and specifically some things you did. So I'm going to try not to ask the same questions.
That's okay. It's all right.
But tell me, how are you today? And you got the new album Zooming. How's everything going with you, sir?
Oh, good. You know, we got the new album Dance With You. That's out now. And you know, it's funny that you know, you mentioned the 70s because that was really where I learned a lot about songwriting, you know, and production, and it was kind of my learning period, you know. But you know, we had a lot of success too during that same time.
Absolutely.
And, you know, Dance With You is kind of the sound of the album. It kind of has a similar sound because, you know, I used some of the same tools that I used when I was recording some of those songs back then. So I do like to keep my sound going, you know, when I record a record, you know.
Absolutely. So I'm imagining that back then when you were carrying around racks of gear like the ARC 2600, the MIDI booths and whatnot, all of these things are software based now for you, correct?
That's true. Yeah, you can get a lot of the same sounds, you know, through software, you know, right, or on, you know, presets on synthesizers, you know. Before you had to search for them, you know, you had to program the synthesizer yourself, you know. Which took a little more time, but it's all in the sound, you know, it's all in what you hear. If you can reproduce what you hear, then, you know, you're on the right track.
Well, let's start there then, because the first synth, I'll call it the worm sound that I heard was from Walter Jr. Morrison on the Funky Worm. But then you took that and you like flipped it and put it in For the Love of You, which is like two opposing forces but you made that sound relevant even in a beautiful ballad like that. How did you design that sound? Did you create that?
Yeah, in a way I did. I was working with Malcolm Cecil. He was one of the producers on Stevie Wonder's Music of My Mind album, and a couple more too.
Sure.
But he built Tonto, this big synthesizer out in LA. And it's kind of famous now. It's in some museum right now.
Wow.
But he kind of helped me with the programming of the For the Love of You sound. I got it from the ARP 2600, which was only part of Tonto. I think Tonto had two of them in the synthesizer itself. Wow. But it kind of from the 2600, I got that sound, and he kind of helped me, with the programming of it. But after that, I started to program, sounds myself, using the ARP 2600. But yeah, I kind of had, a lot of times when I record, I will record a part as though it's part of an orchestra. For example, that For the Love of You sound, that synthesizer sound that's on For the Love of You, that could really, if an orchestra was playing that could be in the woodwind section, maybe an oboe, or a flute or something like that would take that line. So that's kind of my mindset when I'm doing a record is, especially on ballads, like, maybe what part of the orchestra would this part fit into, and try to program the sound, not to duplicate an orchestral sound,
sure,
but to play a part that an orchestral instrument might play.
Yes, sir.
So that's kind of the thinking that goes along with that.
Well, that's cool. I was going to say, I mean, maybe the oboe would play that part, but they wouldn't play it as funky.
Right. It wouldn't sound the same at all.
Right.
But it's in the register.
Yes, sir.
It's something that an oboe could possibly play. A flute player could play that line, but like you said, it wouldn't be as fluid.
Absolutely.
The synthesizer and the keyboard will do a lot more fluid than actual player, because you have the lip position, and you got the your hand positions too. It's a little more difficult to make it that fluid.
Absolutely.
But that's kind of how I think when I do ballads. Like when I'm layering keyboard parts, or if I'm adding a string part. I'm thinking about the orchestra, and even when I play my piano parts, it's like, could I orchestrate this, this song? And usually my answer is yes, because I'm from the old school composition, composers. I studied composition for a long time.
Yeah.
And since I was like 7 years old,
mm-hmm.
and I grew up, learning classical music, analyzing, the composers, what they did, what their motifs were, and, how they put their harmonies together and all those things. So when I approach a song, I just naturally think of it like, okay, this could be an orchestra, like the things I played on At Your Best, Your Love, the keyboard parts, it's all, an orchestra could play this, or Brown Eyed Girl,
Sure.
This could be an orchestra here. You could just reproduce the same thing, but it'll be more, full. It would sound different, but it would sound good.
Understood. Well, I tell you, you got your training, as I understand. You started at 7 years old, but eventually you went on to study at Juilliard.
Yeah, I studied
composition.
Yeah, that's what I was always interested in as a kid. I even told my teacher, when I first started taking lessons, I think I was about 8 years old, little guy sitting on the bench, and I said, I would like to write music, because, it would the composer's name would always be on the sheet, on the side of the page. I said, I would like to write. And he said, well, you're going to have to learn a lot. You're going to have to put in a lot of work, because, you have to learn about all the instruments, what they can play, and, be able to write for them. And I said, I'd like to do that. So he was a professor at the conservatory in Cincinnati, and he was, he knew about, orchestration, and he was a great pianist, could play anything. And so he started to teach me those things, when I was a little kid. And by the time I got to Juilliard, I kind of knew how to write, but I learned more. I learned more there because I learned, how the different instruments, the ranges. I took a course in orchestration, which is very important when you're writing for the orchestra, because you don't want to write something that an instrument can't play, or it's not characteristic of that instrument, because it'll sound strange. So you learn a lot of different things that maybe you wouldn't learn if you didn't study composition.
Understood.
And
now you took that jazz, you took that classical, and you married it with jazz because you also studied under Dr. Billy Taylor, correct?
Yes, he was an incredible pianist. I mean, I've never seen anybody's left hand as as good as Billy Taylor. I mean, he was just unbelievable. But again, learning, because jazz was something I used to play too. We had a group, the three of us younger guys. Ernie played drums, Marvin played bass, and I played piano. And we used to play like Ramsey Lewis trio music, things like that. Young Ho trio. Yeah. That was kind of our thing, and just about anything else that was popular, that we could pick up and play. But when I studied with Billy Taylor, it gave me more insight, into the history of jazz and what different jazz composers were doing. During like the 30s and 40s, and it was a great thing to be able to study with him. He was very knowledgeable, and that helped me with my composition, because what I did, I took some of the jazz ingredients even and combined them a little bit with classical to produce some very unique chords that I use, and that creates that sound.
Depth. There's a depth there.
Yeah, and the lushness of some of the chords incorporates a little bit of classical, and there's a little bit of jazz in there too. I always say, there's a lot of ways you can approach music, and the more you know about music, the more you know about music history. What other composers have done. Sometimes you can pick up and discover your own niche, and that's kind of what I did. I studied a lot of music and analyzed a lot of music, and that music that I wrote, for the groups and for myself, has a lot of history in it. Those chords just don't come out of anywhere. Like you mentioned, "For the Love of You," that starts out with a very unusual chord. The first chord,
6, right?
6 degrees on top.
Yeah.
And the 7th is on the bottom, but it's the root G is also in the bass. So it's an unusual chord to start with, but it's beautiful because it has, other degrees of the scale in that chord too. It's like a 5-note chord, that it starts the song with, and then you have the synthesizer on top of it. Exactly. But those chords underneath have a little bit of jazz and classical things all kind of mixed in, and it makes it, really lush kind of sound where you may, and that's why we didn't use a big band a lot of times, is because the chords supported the music so well and so fully that we really didn't need to add too much.
Understood. Now, I was too young to see an Isley show back, between the 73, 83 type time period. I graduated in 83. But so, by the time you guys were doing Fight the Power and all of that, how did you reproduce that sound on stage though? Did you have another keyboard player with you, or?
Yeah, we would get other band members to support, because there were too many parts for just 3 people to play.
Understood. Yeah.
We needed a drummer. We usually had like 1 or 2 keyboard players, depending on the time, because as we toured more, we picked up a couple more musicians just to fill out what I was doing on the keyboards, because it took a lot. Sometimes I would play like 3-4 parts, and so we just needed to fill it out some more. There was the one time where we had, let's see, Ernie played guitar, and then there was another guitar player. And then sometimes I would play guitar. I would switch off on keyboards and play guitar too on stage.
I see.
So, you know, sometimes, because like when Ernie would go off into his lead thing, you know, a lot of times I would support the rhythm, you know, with the other guy, you know. So as time went on, we picked up a few more musicians than we started with. I think we started with like a drummer, a keyboard player, and then as time went on, we picked up another guitar player, you know, and then another keyboard player. So I think it was like maybe 7 musicians on the stage when we were doing those tours. And, you know, it worked out pretty well that way.
Now, so Ernie always played drums in the studio? He always laid down the drums?
With 3+3 and some of the Live It Up album, George Moreland was playing drums.
I see.
Ernie played on Live It Up on that song.
Got it.
Because I specifically wanted him to play on that song. I said, you know, I wrote that song and I said, you know, George is good. I said, but sometimes George, he has a tendency to play a little too much.
Gotcha.
You know, and this song needs a driving, you know, steady driving beat to it. You got to lay down the drums, you know.
Well, Ernie on the hi-hats, being a drummer, that's my formative instrument, but his hi-hat work was just really, I mean, it just got you dancing. He had a lot of feel in that hi-hat, just swinging.
Yeah. You know, and like I said, there's what they call, what we used to call like a lock-in drummer, who could just lock into a beat and stay there, you know, and keep the rhythm, you know, solid. That's what I wanted on Live It Up. And that was accomplished because that song kind of, it took us into another place that we weren't in. We weren't in the clubs heavy, you know. You know, That Lady was big and it was a pop record, you know, it was R&B pop too. But then when we did Live It Up, that took us into the clubs.
Yeah.
And R&B and kind of expanded our audience again, you know. So that was a big album for us. It had Hello Simi on it too.
Yeah, right. Fan. Definitely a fan. Now do me a favor. First, before I ask you this question, I want to walk back a little bit between the classical and jazz components that you placed in your music, because the only other keyboard player of note, Stevie Wonder notwithstanding, but Bernie Worrell with classical and jazz approach was just a master. So to hear the dynamics of the two of you coming into play and what was going on the funk with the bass and the drum lock and you guys creating all of these colors on top is what makes your music essential listening for today's generation. It's essential. But I want to ask this question, though, because I know that from the composition standpoint, you and primarily Ernie were the bedrock of the sound, the Isley Brothers sound. And in composition, can you walk us through the construction of an inception, or maybe how you received an influence about a song in that Isley Brother era and said, okay, well, hey, me and Ernie got together and did this? Walk us through what that looked like. Pick any song.
Usually what happened was I would get an idea usually from practicing. You know, if I was, because I used to practice all the time. And if I got onto a chord progression that I really liked, I would say, okay, let me save that and start building on it. You know what I mean? That's how ideas usually came. Like, you know, For the Love of You came that way, you know, for example. Just from practicing, and I said, you know, that's the what I call the A section or the chorus I had first. So I said that really is a solid progression. Let me work on this. Let me work on, you know, a verse section, you know, a bridge, you know, whatever. Let me work on a melody, you know, craft a melody into that chord progression, and that's how I would build an idea, usually from practicing. Now, sometimes I could get a melody, you know, but it usually was just a melody without a lyric.
I see.
You know what I mean? The lyric would come last usually. That's how we worked on For the Love of You too. It was I had the melody, but you know, we had to work the lyrics into it. You know?
Did you write the lyrics as well, or did one of the older brothers?
I wrote the lyrics. Ernie, I think, wrote a verse also. You know, he was working on the lyrics with me. But the core of the song, the chord progression and all that, and the bass line, and I had all that stuff, you know, down, because we would record it on what was a TAC recorder. You know, it was like a 4-track.
Sure.
So yeah, we recorded all the parts down, and you know that Moog line was on there too. That was already on there, the synthesizer line. So we just worked on the lyrics, you know, and that was the last thing to come, was the lyrics. And but that's kind of how it would build. It would build from a seed, like a chord progression, and then working on it from there. Sometimes, like Ernie would have a seed of an idea, you know, and like, for example, when Fight the Power was created, I was upstairs. We were at Miss Isley's house. I was upstairs, and I heard Ernie playing the guitar part downstairs, like the A section guitar part. I said, "This sounds pretty good," you know. I said, and I went downstairs and said, "Ernie, play that part again," you know. And then he started playing it, and then I got the bass because I would program that same synthesizer for bass sounds, you know, the 2600. So I programmed the bass thing, and I started playing the bass riff. I don't know what made me play it, but it like gelled. It like, you know, it was like this, you know. And so I said, okay, we can let's put this down on the recorder, you know, because you know we had a really funky thing going there.
Exactly.
So it happens that way too. You know what I mean? That's the one of us would get a seed of an idea, and then we would work it out. And it just so happens that that's how the majority of the songs were written.
Wow. Well, you two were a hit making machine. I mean, there was a consistency and just hit after hit after hit. And one of the only bands that I know, maybe Cameo can function, but the Isley Brothers could take the straight up funk and the straight up ballad. It didn't matter which way you came, and just killed it. Was that intentional, or is that organic? Was that something that you really had to work on and say, now we're going to do the funk, dude, now we're going to do the ballad? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, it's like I said, it just depends on what ideas we had at the time. I remember writing Showdown in the dressing room, you know, because we would have our guitars, the guys would come in and tune our guitars and make sure everything was in tune, the Roadies, you know.
Yeah.
I was, the guitar that I played on stage, I was just, you know, making sure it was in tune, and then I started, you know, filling out some chords, and you know, came up with the riff for Showdown. You know what I mean? Like right there in the dressing room, I said, "Hey, that sounds good. I'll work on that when we get back." You know, and it's like funk. I think is something, and I spoke about this before. It's something that is internal, and I don't know if you can actually teach it or not. If you don't have that rhythm, the first thing you have to have is rhythm.
Yeah. And
if you don't have rhythm, it's very difficult to play funk. You know, it's almost impossible. It really is almost impossible to play it. And it's something that you just have, I think it's innate. I really do. Because, you know, you have great musicians, and sometimes you get them, you know, you say, "Hey man, play this riff," and they have such difficulty playing it. They can't do it. You know, and it's like, wow, man, you know, this guy's a great musician, but he can't play funk, you know? And funk, you just have to have that feeling in you, you know? And you know, not to take anything away from Marvin, because, you know, Marvin was good, Marvin Isley. But there was some riffs that he would have problems with, you know, and you know, sometimes I would play the bass part, and sometimes Ernie would play the bass part. And you know, it's just it's a rhythmic thing, you know, and the syncopation sometimes, You know, like Tell Me When You Need It Again. You know, I played the bass on there.
Mm.
You know, and you know, there's a few other songs that I did too. You know,
No, the bass, the actual bass, and not the bass.
Bass, yeah, the
Yeah.
bass.
Yeah.
The thumping plunking thing. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Some bass solos, you know, I used to play, you know.
Okay, who played bass on Take Me to the Next Phase?
I did. That was synthesizer.
Okay.
You know, that was another one that came. You know, Ernie had he was playing a bass line, you know, at first. And I said, Ernie, you know what? I said, I'm really not feeling that. I mean, you know, go out to play the drums. I said, let me play you what I'm feeling. You know, and he started with the drums. You know, I gave him a little, you know, intro with the drums, and I came boom, boom, boom. I don't know what, you know, I don't know what made me play it. Yeah, but it felt that way. You know what I mean?
Right.
It felt like that's what should be on the bottom. You know, and that's what I mean about innate. You know, like I said, I don't know what made me play the bass thing on Fight the Power, but it felt like it should be moving under there. You know, the bass should be moving. It shouldn't be, you know, solid. And over time, you know, a lot of other people started to make the synthesizer bass moving on the songs. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It became more of a thing to do.
Absolutely.
Because before it was kind of just solid, you know, solid bass line.
Right. Right.
You know, once I start moving that bass like that, you know, a lot of people say, hey, you know, I think that works. You know, they start doing it too.
Definitely.
So it was, it's got to be in you. You know, funk has to be in you. It has to be something like, almost like sports. You know, like some sports you can't make a player do a certain thing. You know what I mean? Everybody has different talents.
Right.
But it just so happens that the funk man, and you know, and I do have to say it was the three of us, but it really started, like Take Me to the Next Phase. That started with, you know, me and Ernie playing drums and me playing that bass synthesizer. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I put some more keyboards in there. I think Ernie put a guitar part on there, and that was it. You know, and it was funky, man. And,
absolutely.
But it's funny, we didn't play it in the order that it ended up in. We had to edit the tape. You know, I took the engineer down to the studio, man, and we like edited that thing like 8 times to get it, you know, in the proper order. You know, we had to, and that was with the 2-inch tapes. You know.
Oh yeah, razor blades.
Yeah, so we were splicing like crazy, but we finally got it in the right order, and you know, put the crowd in there, and that was a project. Take Me to the Next Phase was a project, but it really turned out, you know, really good.
It turned out fantastic, man. And speaking of Showdown, I got to do this because you know, I grabbed a couple, you know, and there the brother is right there, you know. Yeah. And here, yeah, man. I mean, it's excellent stuff. But here's the thing: so you got this funk groove like Showdown, and then number 2 is Groove With You, and you go. Psh. Yeah, I think that's the magic of the Isley Brothers sound. Is like, again, wherever you're coming from, the funk zone or you're coming from the ballad, it's a complete thought. It's original.
Yeah, that was the thing, that being able to do both, it just increased what material we could do. You know what I mean? Because like you have maybe some groups or some single artists, you know, some are balladeers, you know, they do mostly ballads. And then you have the funk bands that do just, you know, mostly funk. Right. But when you can do both, it increases the amount of material you can do. You know what I mean? And that was the good thing. We could do a lot of different things, you know, with our music. And which I do right now. I do a lot of stuff with my music now. I don't know if you heard the song "Man Up," but
I did.
That's that's back to that, you know, funk again. You know, which, you know, I was a major part of that music. You know, and that's what I wanted to show with that album, The One.
Yeah,
because I played all the instruments. I played the bass in there. You know, kind of similar to what I was playing on some of the songs. I played the guitar. You know, like I Want to Be With You, that song, how it starts off with the guitar. That's me playing. That's me with that effect on there. Wow. That's I'm playing that. Wow. And so, like, you know, I don't know, people may not know how much I was in that music. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't, they didn't put that on the albums.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
Because, you know, they say, oh, well, Chris plays keyboards, you know, Ernie plays guitar and he plays drums, and then Marvin plays bass. And that's how they would list it on the records. But that's not necessarily what happened in the studio. I play guitar and don't say goodnight.
Yeah, you know? Really?
You know, play it with my fingers, you know, because give it a soft tone.
Yeah.
I was doing all kinds of stuff on those records.
Amazing.
You know, I would mix it. I would mix the stuff, you know, make sure, you know, with the engineers. That's back then before automation, a lot of those.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, we were like, you know, tape and, you know, making marks on the tracks, you know what I mean? Making sure, okay, you got to pull it down here, pull this up here. You know, then the assistant would have his things, and the other engineer would have his. It was crazy mixing that stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
What did you enjoy the entire process? Was there? Yeah.
That's my favorite part of the music business, is creating new music. I mean, there's nothing like it to me. You know, to have an idea, record it, and it'd be something good enough to finish, you know what I mean, to finish and finally master. I mean, there's nothing like that to me. I mean, that's the best thing in the world.
Now, how did you enjoy the touring aspect? How did you enjoy that?
Oh, it was cool too. It was cool too to see the reaction, you know, how people react to something that you recorded. You know, I mean, you know, because they feeling the same vibe, and most of the times they were. Yeah. You know, and that's a great experience too. It's just after a while it physically gets to you. You know, like one town, another town, you know, and it's not the shows, it's the travel that kind of wears you down. You know, like midway through it, it's like, okay, need a little break, time out, you know, because it's, you know, it's rough.
Well, let me ask, do you have a favorite show, a favorite, you know, that moment when you were on stage and you remember it was just cemented in your mind that night?
Yeah, I remember the thing that stands out to me is Madison Square Garden. We played there like 6 times, and they were sellouts, and just, you know, because there's everybody's at those concerts. You know, you have lots of press. You got, you know, the jocks in New York. You know, I remember Frankie Crocker was there.
Frankie Crocker, yeah,
was the MC. You know. And it was just the total vibe. I mean, the place was rocking, man. You know, we had taking to the next phase, man, and the place was like hopping up and down. You know,
wow.
And it's that was the place to play. You know what I mean? If you could play the Garden and sell out the Garden, you know, that was the place to play, and that really that will always stand out. You know, as one of the big shows.
All right, let's flip it. What was your least favorite night? Maybe it was in the middle of the tour and you thought, what was the night that you thought, you know, I really want to be in the studio right now?
Well, there was a time we did a jazz festival in Kansas City. Yeah, and a lot of people on the show, Parliament, Funkadelics, they were on the show with us, you know, with the Mothership and all. And we came on right before them, because they said, well, you know, if we come on later, then, you know, it's going to be like an hour and a half before we can get that Mothership and everything out of the way, and then it's going to be too late and people are going to leave. So they said, oh, because we'll go on before, because we don't really want to risk that, right? So we got about a minute into Fight the Power, because we started off the song with Fight the Power, and the power cut off.
Okay.
The electricity cut off for about a minute, which seemed like forever.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it was like very, very awkward, you know, and then it cut back on, and then, you know, it's funny because when it cut back on, we were all still playing, you know, together, you know what I mean? Because everybody kept playing their part. It just cut back on. But it was like, you know, Oh no, is it ever gonna come on?
Wow. Well, so lights and everything went off.
I know the lights were on.
The lights are on.
I wish
no
the lights.
sound.
I wish the lights were off. But the lights were still on. You know?
Oh, I see.
And,
wow.
But man, that was like, it seemed like so long. But then, you know, it was, after that, the show was okay, you know. But it's just one of those things, you know, things happen out there.
Absolutely.
You can't control everything, you know.
Not at all. Now, let me ask you, with respect, I asked about the construction of the song and from its inception to completion, but with respect to what's going on around you, we know that Marvin Gaye was influenced by the Vietnam War when he wrote What's Going On. I mean, the times, the political era in the 70s, were there anything like that? You know, I mean, because Spike Lee used Fight the Power, you know what I mean? He set a standard when he used that for School Days. But with respect to, as you were writing, were there outside influences or things that was going on that you said, I need to write a song about this? And what could we get from that when we were just hearing it on the radio and we didn't know that that's what influenced you or Ernie to write that?
Yeah, well, I think the song Fight the Power was influenced about things that were going outside, you know, of a person's control. And that's why the lyric is written that way. A lot of R&B artists in particular were having trouble, you know, crossing over or getting on, you know, top 40 stations. They had to have like so many sales, you know, like it had to be a hot seller. And then it also had to have, you know, a lot of airplay, you know, for them to even consider playing it. So one of the bridge in Fight the Power kind of reflects that what was going on with music. And
they say my music's too loud. They try talking about it.
They say my music's too loud. I tried talking about it, get the big runaround.
Okay, so go on the thing that would get you banned from radio because there's a word coming up that they would just censor right off the bat.
And that happened by chance. The word was nonsense on the paper.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we wrote nonsense on the paper, right? When Ronald got in there and started singing it, he said BS, right? And we said, whoa. You know what he just said? And so we stopped for a minute and we kind of talked about it and said, and then, you know, kind of said, well, you know what? That's kind of what people would say. You know, that's what they would actually say. Because, you know, the frustration aspect, you know, that's probably what they would say. So I said, you know, we decided to do a edited version, which had a beep in it. That was for the 45. But for the album, we said, just leave it. Just leave it on the album version, you know.
Yeah.
And if they want to bleep it, you know, on the radio when they play the album, let them bleep it. But it's funny. It seemed like something that Top 40 wouldn't play, but they were the first ones to play it.
Amazing.
WABC in New York. I never forget. I was driving in my car, and for some reason I was switching around. I switched. I said, "Let me see what the ABC is playing." The Fight the Power had just come out. It's just come out that week. And the next record was Fight the Power. I turned around. I said, I gotta go. I gotta tell Ernie this. I turned around. I went back. I said, Ernie, you know what? I just heard Fight the Power on WABC. Wow. On WABC, which you know, it was hard to get on ABC. You know, they played 13 records. That's it. And it was like, I know we got a hit now. Maybe, and they did their own edit. They didn't use our beep. We just had like a bleep in there in our version. They had a musical thing they they did to it.
Wow.
Said, whoa, they even did their own edit. I said, you know, it's got to be a hit. And that's the album. That's the only album that was #1, top 40.
Amazing.
Heat is on.
Amazing. So were there any other records that had, I know Harvest for the World, Beautiful.
Yeah, that got a lot of play, yeah. But I'm saying you know, of chart numbers. Yeah. That was the only top 40 #1 album.
Oh, understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understood that. I was talking about the, you know, the influence of what's going on around you. I know Harvest of the World with respect to homelessness, with respect to the disparity, you know. So you had a lot of, without being quote unquote message songs, there were a lot of influences from societal issues that made you sit down and go, hey, let's do this.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, well, there was a trend of that happening in the 60s and 70s, you know, like you mentioned Marvin Gaye and, you know, some other artists, you know, even Stevie Wonder had some songs, you know, that had,
absolutely,
you know,
Living for the City.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the biggest ones. And it was kind of a thing to do, you know, if you had something important to say, you know, Seals and Crofts, you know, 4 Dead in Ohio. You know?
Right.
You know, it was like, but if you had something important to say, and a good way to say it, in other words, you know, a good vehicle, a good song to say it, and that was happening back then, and there was certainly enough circumstances to pull from too.
Definitely.
You know, that you could draw an idea from.
Definitely, and unfortunately, you know, there were too many, you know, coming out of the turbulent 60s.
Yeah. I mean, but I think it helps in a way if you can do that. It helps your career in a way if you can, because it helps you connect with people a little bit more.
Sure.
You know, if you can talk about something that everybody's concerned about, or there's something that everybody is looking at, you know, that kind of helps you connect with the audience a little better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I am so happy that we agreed to have 2 segments because it seems like we're just getting started and our first half hour is gone already. So what I'm going to do is bid farewell for now. I'm going to put other descriptions of some wonderful interviews that I've enjoyed from Chris Jasper in the description box here on this channel. And then look forward to part 2 coming up in just a few minutes. So my name is Jere B. This is the incredible Chris Jasper, icon, architect of the Isley Brothers sound, and stellar artist in his own right, BET Lifetime Awards, and many other accolades that he absolutely deserves. We'll be back. My name is Jere B. We'll see you in just a few minutes. God bless.